Hey everyone, welcome back to the Triathlon Weekly News. My name's Travis, and as always, we're getting together to discuss the previous week's races, the upcoming races, and as always, the news headlines throughout the week. The Triathlon Weekly News is presented by thefeed.com. Don't forget to sign up for my athlete team, where you'll get $20 from me every 90 days to use on their store. So without further ado, let's look at the rankings update from last week. And we see that unsurprisingly, Peter Hemmerich, Dana Chevreau, and Kristian Hogenhout really climbed up the rankings. They're now all in the top 20, with Peter Hemmerich sitting at number 11 in the world right now after his phenomenal run, which landed him in second place at Hamburg. All of those guys are way ahead of Jan Frodeno. Jan has only got 2 races now on the board. He's in 152nd place, and he's awaiting that 3rd race to see how high he sits in the rankings. So it definitely looks like he'll be calling in Kristian for another wildcard slot for the PTO event in the US. And let me know what you guys think. How high is he going to go up in the rankings after he finishes his 3rd race there in the US? Will he ever get back to that number 1 spot? He's got only a few races left to do it. At the other weekend's races, Mathis Marjorier, the guy I talked about last week who's climbing the rankings, grabbed another win, and so did Caleb Noble. But however, those races were silver and bronze tier, so they didn't bring in too many points, and so their positions remained the same. And then not much happened at all on the women's side of the racing. However, it's important to note that Grace Beck picked up another win. She is looking in fine form, and she is definitely one to watch. She is on the rise. I do think you also need to watch Taylor Knibb this weekend at Boulder, and she will be racing there, and that will give her her 3rd result that she needs for the PTO rankings. So I bet you'll see her in the top 5 for sure. All right, with that out the way, let's dive into the top 5 headlines from the week. And at number 5, we've got the PTO secures an outside broadcast partnership where they're going to be utilizing the same platform that Ironman uses to broadcast the rest of their races this season. This is super interesting to me, as the Outside Watch has taken quite a bit of criticism recently regarding their Ironman 70.3 broadcast. So I wonder how the footage is going to look from the PTO standpoint, if it's going to be very different. Will it be spotty? Will it be in and out like we've seen already this year? Or will it be something different? As we know, the PTO is focused all about that broadcast and showing off their best athletes. So that'll be interesting to see. We'll see that coming up at the US Open on August 5th. And then at number 4, we've got Alistair Brownlee is on the start list again for Ironman Austria. He's looking to try and claim his World Championship slot for Nice. But what's also interesting is I just checked, and he's also on the start list for Ironman France, which would be, in my opinion, a much better race for him to do in preparation for the Nice World Championships, obviously, as it's on the same course. So not sure exactly which one he'll do yet. He hasn't confirmed, but he's definitely going to be racing an Ironman soon to try and get his spot. There's some good competition at both those races, but I think with his caliber, he should, if he's healthy, pick up the slot that he needs. And then at number 3, speaking of the world champs and Rudy von Berg, one of the favorites you'd have to say going into that race, was actually riding on the course where it will take place and crashed into a car as it turned without indication, and he took the full impact on his shoulder. He said he thought he was okay at first, but unfortunately he has a fractured clavicle and a finger, so he's waiting today to find out whether he needs surgery or not. We'll have to wait and see on that. Hopefully quick recovery for Rudy, who was supposed to be actually racing in France this weekend. So we'll have to wait and see how he does and if he recovers quick enough to be 100% for France in September. At number 2, we've got Sam Laidlow, another one who's been struggling with his health this week as he found out he had a liver infection that apparently affected him even at the Ironman Lanzarote race. He has promised that he will be on the start line at Challenge Roth, however, so we'll just have to wait and see how good of a shape that liver infection leaves him with. So I'm interested to see, does that make him still a favorite for that race now, or is all eyes on Magnus Ditlev and Joe Skipper, and is Sam Laidlow just going there to finish the race? We'll have to wait and see. And then at number 1, the big news for this week, which you might not have heard of before because I caught the snippet of it on the Short Shoot Triathlon podcast, which is a Super League triathlon podcast. And I heard Tim Don talk about it because Ironman never really released this information. I did some digging and it was actually really hard to find where this is. But he said that Ironman have actually recently changed the rules, as usually when you won an Ironman World Championship, you just had to validate with another Ironman race to be able to automatically qualify for the World Champs. You didn't even have to place high and get a slot. And then if you podiumed, you had to validate a race as well within 1 year. So it was 5 years if you won the World Champs, and within 1 year if you podiumed. And however, this year Ironman have decided to change it, that if you've won or if you've podiumed, you actually don't need to validate your race. So theoretically, Sam Lalo now, despite his performance at Ironman Lanzarote, does not need to do another Ironman race, as well as Kristian and Gustav. They now could just rock up to Nice without validating their spot there, and it makes it a lot more plausible for them to do. And Tim Don actually didn't like the idea. He thought it wasn't cool, to use his words. He just says he doesn't know why they decided to change that rule out of nowhere when it's been that way for a long time. I myself kind of find it good. I don't feel like validating a race is really necessary. So I think this is a good rule. I wonder if Ironman knows something in the background that those two Norwegians might actually race the race. We'll have to wait and see. In my opinion, they haven't fully denied that they're going to be racing there. I guess it depends on how their short course racing goes. So we'll have to see. Let me know what you think about that rule change, and I'll link it in the description down below. All right, and then onto the video of the week, and this one I found hilarious. I watched it all the way through, and that is 18-year-old Tommy Butler did an Ironman without training at Ironman Texas. It's absolutely insane. He has such great energy throughout the video, and yeah, just a great story. I don't recommend anyone following in his footsteps, but you've got to go check it out. It'll be linked in the description. All right, and then onto the article of the week, and this week it's Susan Lack's article on triathlete.com about why drones aren't going to be replacing motorcycles anytime soon. She managed to get an expert on there to interview and ask the tough questions of why we haven't seen more drones filming the races that we watch. And the expert really goes on to highlight all the drawbacks and difficulties with using a drone, the costs involved, and the limitations. So it's a great read if you've ever had that question as to why we don't see more drones. Surely we don't need as many motorcycles. I think you should read this article first. And then the hot topic of the week, I'm just going to throw this out there as a quick question. Is biking now the least important leg of triathlon? I've just been thinking about this a little bit more recently. I think biking is still insanely important, but it seems right now that if you can't swim in the front pack, you don't really have a chance of winning. And if you can't run as fast as Jason West, Kristian Blumenfeld, and Alex Yee, you also don't really have a chance of winning. And I just thought that was an interesting one to leave there for you guys. Discuss it down below. Of course, the bike is super important, but is it the least important? Okay, and then on to Ironman Hamburg, and I'm not going to recap what happened. I've actually been extremely upset about it all week, and of course, my condolences to all of those affected by what happened. It was truly a tragic event, and I remember watching it live with my girlfriend just before the accident happened, and I thought to myself, this is extremely dangerous. I don't know if I can keep watching. I also thought it was extremely unfair with having so many motorcycles up the front of the race. And I actually told my girlfriend, hey, look at this. What do you think of this? And the first thing she said was, that looks extremely dangerous. So it was just really horrifying when I woke up in the morning to see what had happened and gather all the news for it. And I actually waited till today to put out the news. I didn't want to put out something earlier out of respect. And I also wanted to see what the aftermath was and see what Ironman had to say about it. And thankfully, we have a lot more information on it now, which I wanted to talk about. So I gathered in a lot of resources, like I said. So what I saw was a huge consensus from everyone that the whole situation just before the event and leading up to the event was really unsafe. And not just really unsafe, but ridiculously unsafe. I also saw a huge outcry, and I think nobody denies this, that the broadcast should have been stopped. Even Andrew Messick admitted that that was a huge mistake to several interviews. And what doesn't really add up to me is he said they have a critical incident protocol, but how in the world does that critical incident protocol not include something to do with the broadcast and shutting down the broadcast? They were clearly taking off comments off of the live stream, but I'm not sure why they didn't take off the live stream. And they really left the commentator, Greg Walsh, and company hanging there just to talk about the race and as if nothing happened. And I think that was really, really disrespectful. And I think that's something that they really need to fix. I personally think the pro race should have been stopped at that point because they clearly couldn't guarantee safety, not only for the pros, but also for the age groupers, because as it was shown, they did not do enough to safely protect the athletes on their course. So I think it should have been stopped. Let me know what you guys think below. Josh Hamburger also put a post up on this saying he's not sure why they continued to race. And the one thing that Andrew Messick said in one of the podcasts that I thought was fascinating, he believed the race was safe, otherwise they wouldn't have gone ahead with it. And to me, it just brought up in my mind from back when I was a pilot and learning how to fly. One of my main flight instructors who I really respected, he said to me, the most important word a pilot should know, Travis, is no. Because your brain wants to convince you that things are safe. And he always said to me, don't believe your lying eyes. You have to look at things very objectively. And it seems like Ironman really didn't do that in this case. They, to me, really believed their lying eyes that this was safe, when clearly to everyone else, and everyone else for a long time, that this situation with too many motos is very unsafe. Without closed roads, with narrow two-way roads, it just seems like to me they got in a situation of telling themselves, like Messick said, that the race was safe. And I think that's a really dangerous place to be. I wish some of the podcasts and interviewers had asked a little bit more specific questions and harder questions that really challenged Messick on what their safety protocol is, what the specific guidelines they have for motorcycle drivers, what training's involved, how they choose their motorcycle drivers, all of that. I would have loved to hear so much more, because right now Ironman's in a tricky situation. If you ask me, they have to now, they owe it now to the community and those paying so much money to the races to explain why they can guarantee safety. I know there's always risk involved, but that is something that never should have happened. And they owe us all a huge amount of change and a huge amount of information to make the community sign up for their races. And I think that's something that I hope that they decide to talk about more and to continue to release more information on, and that they continue to change. And if they want to join me on my YouTube platform to talk about it, I would love to have them on. I've heard of so many incidents recently myself, and I know Jack Kelly from How They Train is compiling a list together of all of everybody's close calls and accidents, and so that's going to be interesting to hear about. I mean, at 70.3 Gulf Coast, we heard of being hit by a car not on a closed course. We've heard Joe Skipper saying that the Ironman World Championship bike course isn't fully closed, which is mind-blowing to me. And we also heard Rudy von Berg talking with Jack Kelly on How They Train about how there isn't really any clear rules regarding the downhill sections and how the pros should take the corners on the roads. And that is just absurd to me. It seems like a recipe for more disasters and accidents upcoming if Ironman doesn't change some of their safety protocols. And I think now they really are under fire for this, and the lens is going to be on them. They've got 70.3 Boulder as their next broadcast. All eyes will be on the moto situation there, but I really think they need to release more clear information on what their safety situation is and their safety guidelines for their races. And I think we all are owed it, like I said. I also think that the pros have a huge responsibility here to talk to Ironman, like Patrick Lange is going to do, with suggestions. But I really think it needs to go one step forward, and I really think they need to demand this to keep the safety in the sport, because if it was one of the pros that was hit, I think it would be even more dramatic. So I really hope the pros keep working together with all the organizations, just like they did with Challenge Rock, to bring about the change. I thought it was awesome for the Challenge CEO to go on and speak about what happened, and also call in a meeting to talk about, is their race going to be super safe? And it looks like they all agreed it was going to be. I will be there in person, also on a motorbike, so I will be able to give you really good feedback on how safe that race was and what they did to make sure it was safe. But with all that aside, you can probably tell I'm a little bit intense about that, because it did really upset me this week, and I'm and I'm really because I'm really invested in the sport. I really do love it. But on a more positive note, we do have another massive weekend of racing coming up this weekend, which is awesome. And Pro Tri News put some awesome graphics up, which I'll show you now, highlighting some of the races coming up. But like I said, Boulder is the main live stream one to watch, and I think that's going to be a really good race. I think this is the 4th time that Sam Long and Lionel Sanders are going head-to-head, as well as they will be racing Trevor Foley, who had an awesome 2nd place at St. George, who you might have seen on an interview with me. I also want you to keep an eye out on Simon Shee on that swim for me, and he was an awesome interview I did as well. So on the women's side, we've also got Holly racing in now her local town. She's also said that she's racing without a taper, so that'll be interesting to see how that goes. And as well as Taylor Knibb, like we mentioned, looking to get her 3rd score on the board. Jeannie Metzler is always a good one to watch, and I definitely think she'll be on another podium there. So that's it for this week. Thanks as always. Let me know your comments down below. I can't wait for this weekend's racing. I've also got my first swim run event, so I'm super stoked on that. A little bit nervous. It looks so fun though, and I'm going to try and put a video together for that for you guys. I hope you all have a really safe weekend. As always, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one. Have a good one.